The women's Intercontinental Championship and the women's United States Championship were the two most wanted championships that fans wanted to see. Excuse me. Excuse me. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry about that, guys. The big reason why fans wanted to see those championships in the women's division is because they want to see the women get more opportunities at championship gold than ever before. So now all three brands, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, now have a men's world championship, a women's world championship, a men's mid-card championship, a women's mid-card championship, and tag team championship. That is a grand total. That is a grand total of 19 championships, counting let me rephrase that. That is a total of 21 championships in WWE, counting the NXT Heritage Cup, the Evolve Men's and Women's Championships, as well as the WWE ID Men's and Women's Championships. That is, again, a total of 21 championships, which is huge. However, ever since Becky Lynch became champion, defeating Lyra Valkyria at Money in the Bank earlier this year, and Julia becoming the women's United States champion, defeating Zelina Vega in Riyadh earlier this year, it seems as if both championships have not gotten the respect that they deserve. But the question is, why? Why is that the case? Well, this actually goes back quite a bit of ways. In fact, truth be told, this actually goes back to when the Women's United States Championship was first announced last year, right around this time last year, when SmackDown GM Nick Aldis announced that there would be a tournament to crown a first ever Women's United States Champion. At Saturday night's main event in December of last year, Chelsea Green and Michin battled it out for the right to become the first ever women's U.S. champion. Chelsea Green ended up winning the match before losing it to Zelina Vega just mere months later. Lyra Valkyria became the first ever Intercontinental champion and held it until Money in the Bank, losing it to Becky Lynch. Zelina Vega held the women's U.S. championship for only a couple months before losing it to Julia in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the night before Night of Champions. Unfortunately, now both championships have yet to be defended, and the reason for it is because fans believe is because apparently WWE does not believe that those two women are fit to hold those championships. However, fans actually disagree. People forget that Julia is literally the fastest rising star in women's wrestling today, being only I believe just the fourth. Yes, I believe so. I believe being the fourth woman in history to only be in NXT for a year. Actually, let me backtrack that. Julia is actually just the first person. She is actually I believe the second person. Yeah, I believe so. She is the second person to win an NXT championship several months after her debut, and getting called up to the main roster earlier than expected. She's the only one of only two people to pull that off. The first, Kevin Owens, obviously being it only having been in NXT for less than a year, already becoming an NXT champion and having his very first match against John Cena. How crazy is that? However, with Julia now aligning herself with Kiana James, it seems as if Kiana James is holding Julia back. And I do believe that could very may well be the case. That could potentially be the reason why Julia has yet to defend the women's United States title. Now, as far as Becky Lynch goes, there has been some chatter that Becky Lynch could be defending the women's Intercontinental Championship against AJ Lee this upcoming Saturday at Crown Jewel, which is possible because apparently rumors have it that AJ Lee is slated to make an appearance tomorrow night on Raw. We don't know yet for sure. But what we do know is that Becky Lynch has been obsessed with AJ Lee ever since WrestlePalooza, losing to AJ via a submission. One thing that we've come to realize when it comes to championships in WWE is that with the limited time that each show has, right? With Raw, SmackDown, NXT, the main roster PLEs, the NXT PLEs. There are with such little time, so there are so many championships that can make their way onto TV, and we all knew that. We knew that, right? You know, the moment we first watched our first WWE show, whether it was on TV or whether it was live in person, we all knew that there was that so many championships can get so much screen time on TV. However, fans believe that both the women's IC and US titles should get more screen time, and I completely agree. I feel like both championships need to get defended more often, just like the men's championships are. Like when you look at Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn has been the United States champion for a month now, and he is already continuing. He's already continuing the John Cena legacy of hosting the United States Championship Open Challenge every single week. Now, do I believe that that's a bad idea? 100%. It is 100% a bad idea because the more matches you compete in, the more fatigue you get, and the more fatigue you get, the higher your chances are of losing the title to some random guy who hasn't been on TV that much. That guy ends up getting more screen time than ever before, which is highly possible. And that was something that the Miz on commentary a couple weeks ago talked about. He talked about how the open challenges are a disgrace to the legacy of the U.S. title, and I completely agree, because when you look at it, the United States Championship, is literally is one of the most prestigious championships in WWE today, going all the way back to when 1979. I want to say 79. I want to say. I think it's 79. I'm going to have to take a look, but I believe it's 1979. United States Championship. Here we are. This goes all the way back. This goes all the way back to 1975. Sorry, 1975, as part of Jim Crockett Promotions, which then became WCW. And it's weird because the because originally when it was a part of Jim Crockett Promotions, it was known as the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship, which was part of the Mid Atlantic territory. Then it became the NWA US Heavyweight Championship, the Undisputed Championship actually, and then when Jim Crockett Promotions was bought out by WCW, it just simply became the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship, and then when the title invaded WWE, it simply just became the WCW United States Championship. And then when the championship was resurrected by WWE in 2003, it simply became the WWE United States Championship from then up until recently. The current again, this championship goes back so many years. The first ever champion was none other than Harley Race, and then over time, over time, there's been a lot of history with this one. So when you look at the championship, the most reigns was held by none other than Ric Flair, two-time Hall of Famer Ric Flair, who held the title 6 times in his career. The longest reign ever in any era of professional wrestling is Lex Luger, and this is his 3rd reign as champion. He held it for 523 days. The shortest reign was held by Stone Cold Steve Austin in his 2nd reign, who had held it for only 5 minutes. The oldest champion is none other than WWE Hall of Famer, the late great Terry Funk, at 56 years old, and he held the title for 84 days. The youngest champion is none other than David Flair, who I believe retired from professional wrestling in 2009. So he's just doing his own thing outside of WWE. And I believe I was right. Yeah, David Flair, 20 years old, and he held the title for 121 days. Get this: the heaviest champion is none other than the Big Show, who weighed when he was champion, he weighed 500 pounds. Absolutely wild. The lightest champion is none other than Kalisto, or I believe now he's currently under his old name, Samurai del Sol. He weighs 170 pounds. So he's become the lightest champion ever. And think about this. The current champion, Sami Zayn, has done so much for the title. In fact, interestingly enough, Ric Flair may have held the title 6 times. Apparently he's actually being recognized as one of, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I believe one of 6 men to hold to hold the United States Championship 5 times. In fact, those men are, if I could scroll up here a little bit, are Bret Hart, Wahoo McDaniel, John Cena, and of course Ric Flair and Lex Luger. There is someone else. Obviously, you guys probably might have an idea of who I am referring to because of what he did in 2007. I really can't say who he is, but the only clue that I will give you is that he won the 2004 Royal Rumble and won the world title at that year's WrestleMania. So you guys already know who I'm talking about, but those are the men that held the championship 5 times. Ric Flair supposedly being recognized as 6, he's being recognized as 5. So when you and then of course you look at the men's and you look at the Intercontinental Championship. A lot of history there. 1979, Pat Patterson, the first ever champion, and for both of these championships, a total combined of more than 4 dozen Hall of Famers have held at least one or both of those championships, including guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, guys like Triple H, Eddie Guerrero, guys like Rob Van Dam, and other legends, like Kane, Big Show, Shelton Benjamin, Bobby Lashley, just to name some. And yet, for some reason, WWE isn't giving the women's championships the respect and the time that they deserve. Like the last time Julia defended her title, it was in a rematch against Zelina Vega, and Julia won with the help of Kiana James. So the question becomes, when are we going? Can't speak. When are we going to see these championships get defended? What about Becky Lynch? When is she going to defend her championship? The way I see it, because of both Becky and Julia, the titles have become stale, and they're not, and they've become pretty much outdated at this point. According to members of the WWE universe, the championships have now become stale. The storylines, involving Becky and the women's IC title, Julia and the women's US title, the storylines have become so stale that they want to see new champions, and they want to see those champions defend the title on a regular basis. But Becky Lynch, she 100% refuses to, because she's obsessed with AJ Lee. And as far as Julia goes, Julia is just doing Julia things. She's with Kiana James, and apparently Kiana James believes that everybody should wait until Julia decides to, until Julia decides when she defends the title. But let's be real, that's not up to her. It's up to the GM it's not up to Becky and Julia on when they should defend the titles. It's up to Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis, the GMs of Raw and SmackDown respectively, to decide when they defend the titles. Which, if I was in their shoes, I would put the titles on someone completely new. Like when you think about the women's US title, it has to be Michin. 100%, it has to be Michin, because right now there really isn't anybody that will take the challenge of challenging Julia for that title. And when you look at Zelina Vega, when she became champion, she was getting so much screen time. But now that she's no longer champion, she's been demoted basically to working WWE main event, which, I mean, it's fine, but we don't see her on SmackDown anymore. And the only time the only time we would ever see her on SmackDown is if she was doing a backstage segment, and that's pretty much it. And it's the same thing with Becky. There really isn't anybody that will take the title off of her. I mean, obviously, yeah, sure, Lyra could, but Lyra is no longer allowed to challenge for that title because of the interference from Bayley at SummerSlam just a couple months ago. And so, looking at it on the surface, I truly believe that WWE needs to do something about both championships and the title holders. But as far as what, I mean, there's a lot that they could do. They could host a tournament to crown a new number one contender. They could host a series of qualifiers as well. You know, maybe do a fatal four-way qualifier or something like that. There's plenty that they can do. But with all the different storylines that's going on both Raw and SmackDown, collectively, especially with what's been going on with Crown Jewel, with the men's Crown Jewel Championship, the women's Crown Jewel Championship, the bullshit involving Rhea and Io, and of course the Kabuki Warriors, with the match that we're finally getting to see after almost 10 years, AJ Styles versus John Cena, with Dragon Lee chasing after Dominic Mysterio's AAA Mega Championship, with Rusev and AJ Styles going after Dom's IC Championship. There's a lot happening. There is a lot happening, but yet nothing's happening with the women's titles. And the way I see it, I feel like that both championships need to be defended on a regular basis, because if they don't get defended on a regular basis, those titles could end up getting retired sooner than people may believe. But with that being said, I want your guys' honest opinion on this whole ordeal. Let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on this whole thing, and your take on what WWE should do with both the women's IC and US titles. I'm very curious of what you guys have to say. I would love for you guys to comment below. Start up a bit of a rant. I'm very curious on what you guys have to say. So drop them in the comments below. And that'll do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more WWE topic videos in the future, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and as always, make sure you guys are following me on all of my social media. All of my ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.